Welcome to World News by Denis Halandzovskyi. If you value sober, clear, and insightful analysis of political developments around the world, please subscribe, leave a comment, and share your thoughts. Today we explore how former President Donald Trump's ongoing focus on President Joe Biden continues to influence U.S. domestic politics and has ripple effects on global diplomacy and strategic decision-making. In the current political environment, Donald Trump remains sharply preoccupied with his political rival, Joe Biden. This attention manifests in speeches, public statements, campaign narratives, and strategic framing of policies. Trump consistently positions himself against Biden's record, framing his own platform as a corrective to what he casts as failure, weakness, or mismanagement. This dynamic is notable because it shapes how Republican discourse remains tethered to Biden, even as Trump and his circle seek to establish a distinct agenda. Rather than presenting a standalone platform centered entirely on new policy proposals, much of Trump's messaging revolves around contrasting himself with his former successor, magnifying perceived shortcomings, and reasserting his own claims to leadership. Politically, this creates a persistent narrative tension. Trump defines his objectives not solely by what he wants to achieve, but by what he believes Biden failed to accomplish. This focus resonates with a significant portion of the Republican base, which views Biden's presidency as emblematic of broader dissatisfaction, whether on immigration, economic concerns, foreign policy, or internal security. By centering the political discourse on this opposition, Trump keeps the story tightly bound to personal rivalry rather than policy debate alone. This preoccupation also has wider implications for how Republican leaders engage with legislative agendas. In many cases, policy positions are not articulated independently but are framed as corrections of past Democratic decisions. In committee hearings, press conferences, and public addresses, references to Biden's record provide the backdrop for new Republican proposals. This framing serves to energize supporters, but potentially limits the capacity for forward-looking policy articulation beyond criticism. Importantly, Trump's focus on Biden extends beyond domestic issues. It shapes international perceptions of U.S. politics as intensely polarized, where leadership debates are less about foreign strategy and more about internal rivalry. For allies and global partners, the repeated emphasis on personal competition highlights a U.S. political culture consumed by partisan conflict, perhaps at the expense of strategic coherence. The ongoing emphasis on Joe Biden also affects governance in Washington and raises questions about strategic clarity at a critical time. When major influences such as immigration reform, defense spending, or international alliances are discussed primarily through the lens of opposition to Biden's record, it can obscure substantive debate on long-term goals. Foreign policy observers have noted that preoccupation with domestic political rivalries can impact diplomatic focus. Allies and adversaries alike watch how U.S. leadership frames its priorities. When a significant portion of political energy is tied to countering or critiquing a predecessor's approach, it raises questions about continuity of strategy in matters of defense, security partnerships, trade negotiations, and global challenge responses. This is particularly relevant amid ongoing global tensions, from the war in Ukraine to rising competition in the Indo-Pacific. European partners, NATO members, and other allies closely monitor how U.S. political dynamics influence policy consistency. If key decisions are framed chiefly through past grievances rather than shared strategic objectives, it can complicate international cooperation. Moreover, the emphasis on rivalry shapes public expectations. U.S. citizens increasingly consume political narratives as contests of personalities rather than debates over policy substance. This trend reinforces polarization, making bipartisan consensus on critical issues even more elusive. When political discourse centers on defeating political rivals rather than addressing systemic challenges, climate change, healthcare, migration flux, economic inequality, long-term planning suffers. For Ukraine, the implications are also significant. As Kyiv continues to navigate its security needs amid war, the US's domestic preoccupations can influence perceptions of reliability and commitment. Ukrainian officials must interpret shifts in US political narrative through the lens of both strategic necessity and partnership stability. A focus on internal political rivalries abroad rather than on sustained support frameworks, could create uncertainty about the continuity of military and diplomatic backing. It is crucial to recognize that such political dynamics are not unique to the United States. Democracies around the world often grapple with the interplay between leadership rivalries and policy direction. However, given the US's central role in global security architecture, its domestic political preoccupations have ramifications that extend far beyond its borders. Thank you for watching this report on world news by Denis Halandzovskyi. If you found this analysis helpful, please subscribe, leave a comment, and share your thoughts. Independent reporting and thoughtful discussion are vital in an era of intensifying global challenges. Stay informed, stay engaged. See you in the next update.